Hey guys, David here with an assembly guide for the shoe loader. First off, we're going to take a look at what parts and tools you'll need in order to build your own shoe loader. For printed parts, you'll need an upper shell, a lower shell, feed neck, alignment pins, and the button. And depending on which upper shell you chose, you'll need your pod lid or speed feed. For the rotor parts, what you'll need is the motor and battery assembly, the locking clips with their screws and O-rings. You'll need the anti-jam tab. You'll need the gear assembly, bottom tray, center arm, and 8-ball. For tools, what you'll need are a screwdriver, a precision screwdriver, some sandpaper. You also need some sort of gel super glue, some Elmers glue helps, and some thread locker. You also need the 1 1/4 inch 440 screws, 2 of them, and 2 440 nuts, and some electrical or hockey tape so that your feed neck fits into your marker. Now, this guide assumes that all the support material has been removed from the printed parts and the parts have been properly trimmed to fit together. I'll do another video of the post-processing that I do to my prints. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is do a fit check. You want to make sure that the upper and lower fit together. You want to make sure that the alignment pins and the lower and feed neck fit together. And you want to make sure there's no gap in between the two. And you want to make sure that the holes are aligned, which they should. That's the whole point. Next, you want to make sure that the internals fit. So you want to drop in the front part of the internals and make sure that they rotate freely. And then take those out. You want to make sure that the anti-jam tab fits and slides easily. You want to make sure that the button fits and also moves freely. And then lastly, you want to make sure that the motor assembly fits in easily. And it should lightly snap in if you rock it back to front. And the button should be able to turn on the motor assembly. Alright, next up is to glue the 440 nuts into the upper. Now this upper already has the nuts glued in, so I'm not going to do it for real. The first thing you do is drop the nuts into the hole, and then you screw in the 440 screw, and this will hold the nut in place. Make sure not to crank it or else it'll go through the ramp above. Then you drip some glue into the hole and do the same thing on the other side. And then you'll put this aside and let the glue cure. Alright, next up is to glue the feed neck to the lower. First thing you want to do is prep the pieces by scuffing the mating surfaces with sandpaper so that the glue can get a better grip. If your alignment pins are moving around too much or a little too small, some Elmer's glue might help keep them in place. Once you have the alignment pins in the lower, you'll want to put the gel glue on the feed neck, just all around, and then mate the two surfaces. And you'll want to apply some pressure once you have the surfaces mated, and make sure that there's no gap in between the feed neck and the lower. You want to hold it there for a few seconds to let the glue grab hold. And then before the glue dries, you'll probably want to wipe away the excess that comes out the side and also inside the feed neck, because this is where the balls come out. Alright, once the glue for the feed neck has cured, you're ready to drop in your rotor internals. First thing to do is to screw in the locking clips. Now I've already got this started. You want to make sure that the O-ring that came on the screw is still there. You're going to apply a little bit of pressure while screwing it in because the screws are actually biting into the printed plastic. And you don't want to crank it too hard once it hits the bottom because you'll strip out the plastic. If it's in right, you'll have some light resistance when moving the clip. Next, you'll drop in the button and the anti-jam pull tab. Snap in the motor assembly. Should be just as easy as during the fit check. And then you'll drop in the front internals, one piece at a time. And it may take a little bit of wiggling to get the front pieces seated correctly. Once everything is in, you lock the pieces in place and then you do a quick check. Make sure it turns on and make sure that the anti-jam works. Okay, to assemble the pod lid is pretty simple. First, you take the pod lid off the pod, make sure that the spring is still there. You'll put the spring in the spring hole and then close the lid on the upper. Then you take the pin, put it in the pinhole. And then lastly, drop some glue on the sides to make sure that the pin doesn't move. Alright, we are at the last part of the assembly. Now the clearance between the upper and lower are pretty tight once you have the motor assembly and battery in there. So you're gonna have to be a little bit careful. What you do is you take the upper and you slant it downwards and slide in the shell. Then it's up to you if you want to use some thread locker on the screws. Put the screws in, and that will hold the two pieces together. And then lastly, you're going to take either electrical tape or hockey tape and wrap it around the feed neck so that your marker's feed neck clamps on. And then you're done.